The guitar case had $11 in it, 3 crumpled ones, a 5 that someone had folded into a tiny triangle, and a handful of quarters that clinked every time someone walked too close. Melody Sinclair did not care about the money right now. She cared about the music. She was sitting on an overturned milk crate on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, right between a Gucci storefront and a tall palm tree that threw a slanted shadow across the sidewalk. Her acoustic guitar was across her lap. Her fingers moved over the strings like they had been doing this their entire life, because they had. She was 26 years old, fair-skinned, black, with coiled hair pulled into a loose bun and silver hoop earrings catching the California sun. She wore a plain white t-shirt, thrifted jeans, and boots that had walked more miles than most people drive in a year. And she was singing. Not performing, not showing off. Singing. The kind of singing that made people slow their steps without knowing why. The kind that made a woman stop mid-conversation and turn around. The kind that made a teenager pull out her phone and start recording because she knew, somehow, that she was hearing something that mattered. A small crowd had gathered, maybe 15 people. Some were tourists holding shopping bags from stores where a single candle cost more than Melody made in a week. Some were locals who had heard her before and came back. A woman in sunglasses stood near the front with tears sliding down her cheeks, and she did not wipe them away. A man in a jogger outfit had stopped mid-run and was just standing there with his earbuds hanging around his neck, breathing hard, listening. Melody was singing a slowed-down acoustic version of a popular R&B song, but she had rearranged it so completely that it barely sounded like the original. She stripped it down to its bones and rebuilt it with her voice, and what came out was something raw and open and aching, something that made strangers feel like she was singing directly to them. She did not notice the black Maybach that pulled up to the curb half a block away. She did not notice when the rear door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall, lean, with dark hair pushed back from his forehead. His posture was the kind that came from years of walking into rooms and knowing every head would turn. His expression was calm, controlled, and completely unreadable. He wore a dark suit that fit him like it had been stitched onto his body, and he moved with the quiet precision of someone who never wasted a single motion. This was Park Chan-woo. He was 31 years old. He was the head of the Park Empire, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that owned luxury hotels, high-end real estate, and tech ventures across the United States and South Korea. He had relocated the company's American headquarters to Beverly Hills 3 years ago. He was known in boardrooms as the closer because no deal escaped him. He did not smile often. He did not stay anywhere longer than necessary. He was supposed to be walking into a meeting at the luxury hotel across the street right now. His senior advisor, Mr. Yo, was already inside waiting. Chan-woo was never late. He was pathologically punctual. But Melody's voice caught him mid-step. He stopped on the sidewalk, one foot on the curb, one still near the car. His driver, a quiet man named Hugh who had worked for the Park family for 9 years, asked through the open door if everything was all right. Chan-woo did not answer. He just stood there. He listened to the entire song. When the small crowd clapped and a few people tossed money into the guitar case, Chan-woo did not clap. He did not toss money. He watched Melody with a look that was hard to describe. It was not attraction, not exactly. It was recognition, like he had just heard a sound he forgot existed. Like someone had opened a door in a house he thought he had sealed shut years ago. Melody started another song. This one was original. She had written it on a bus 3 weeks ago, scribbling lyrics on the back of a grocery receipt while the city blurred past the window. It was about loneliness, but not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind where you are surrounded by people and still feel like you are standing in an empty room. Chan-woo's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. It was Mr. Yo, a text message that read, "The investors are seated. Where are you?" Chan-woo silenced the phone. He slid it back into his pocket. He walked closer to the small crowd and stood at the edge with his arms folded. He stayed for the second song, then the third, then the fourth. 23 minutes passed. His phone buzzed 6 more times. He did not look at it once. Mr. Yo eventually came outside. He was a man in his late 50s, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with the kind of posture that suggested he had been standing at attention since birth. He had served the Park family for over 2 decades, first under Chan-woo's father and now under Chan-woo himself. He was loyal, traditional, and deeply protective of the family's image. He found his boss standing on a public sidewalk in Beverly Hills, watching a street musician like the rest of the world had stopped spinning. Mr. Yo stepped beside him and said quietly, "The investors are waiting. The Zhang Group flew in from New York this morning." Chan-woo did not take his eyes off Melody. "Let them wait," he said. Mr. Yo stared at him. In 9 years of working directly under Chan-woo, he had never heard those words come out of his mouth. Not once. Chan-woo did not make people wait. Chan-woo arrived early. Chan-woo treated time like a currency more valuable than money. And yet here he was, standing on a sidewalk, letting a $400 million meeting cool in a conference room, because a woman with a guitar was singing. Melody finished her set. The crowd thinned. People dropped a few more bills into the case and moved on with their afternoon. She stretched her fingers, rolled her neck, and started loosening the guitar strings for packing. Chan-woo approached. His shadow fell across the guitar case. Melody looked up. She saw a well-dressed man. That was all. She had no idea who he was. She did not read business magazines. She did not follow billionaire news. She just saw a tall Korean man in an expensive suit looking at her with an expression she could not quite figure out. "That second song," he said. "What was it called?" Melody gave him a small, tired smile. The kind of smile that came from a long afternoon in the sun and a guitar case with $11 in it. "I haven't named it yet," she said. "I wrote it last week on the bus." Chan-woo looked at her for a beat too long. Then he said, "When you name it, I want to know." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a black business card, and placed it on top of the crumpled bills in the guitar case. Then he turned and walked toward the hotel without another word. Melody watched him go. She was slightly confused and slightly amused. She looked down at the card. It was simple. Black mat with white lettering. It had a name, a phone number, and nothing else. No company, no title, just Park Chan-woo. She picked it up, turned it over in her fingers, and tucked it into her back pocket. Then she packed up her guitar, closed the case, and walked down the street toward the coffee shop where her best friend Dina worked. The coffee shop was called Marigold, and it sat on a side street just off Rodeo Drive. Dina Michaels was behind the counter, her braids pulled up in a high bun, wiping down the espresso machine with the energy of someone who had been awake since 5 in the morning and was running purely on caffeine and spite. She was 27, sharp-tongued, fiercely loyal, and the closest thing Melody had to family. Melody slid onto a stool at the counter and set her guitar case on the floor. "How much today?" Dina asked. $11. Capitalism is a scam. I know. Melody plugged her phone into the charger Dina kept behind the counter. This was their routine. Melody performed, came to Marigold, charged her phone, drank whatever free drink Dina made her, and they talked about life until the evening shift started. Melody pulled out the business card and set it on the counter. Dina picked it up, read it, put it down, picked it up again. "Park Chan-woo," she said slowly. "Why does that name sound expensive?" "Some guy in a suit. He stood there for my whole set. Like the whole thing, 4 songs. Didn't clap, didn't tip, just watched." "That's either romantic or terrifying." "He asked me the name of one of my songs." "Which one?" "The new one, the bus one." Dina studied the card again. "No company name, no title, just a name and a number. That's either a serial killer or a billionaire. Or just a guy who liked the music." "Girl." Nobody stands through 4 songs on Rodeo Drive in a suit unless they are deeply weird or deeply rich. Or both. Melody laughed. It was a real laugh, and it felt good. She did not get to laugh like that often. Her life was not tragic, but it was heavy. She had grown up in foster care in Oakland, bounced between 6 homes before she aged out of the system at 18. She taught herself guitar from YouTube tutorials and borrowed library books. She taught herself to sing by singing, over and over, in stairwells and empty rooms and parks where nobody told her to stop. She moved to Los Angeles 3 years ago with a duffel bag, a guitar, and $400. She worked part-time at a community center doing vocal coaching for kids, and every other dollar she made went towards saving up for a recording demo. She performed on the streets not because she had no other choice, but because the streets were where people actually listened. No gatekeepers, no auditions, no industry people telling her to change her sound. Just her and her guitar, and anyone who stopped to hear. But there was a wound she carried, one she did not talk about, a man named Terrence Booker, who everyone called Terry, a music producer in Scottsdale, Arizona. She had dated him 2 years ago. He told her she was talented. He told her he would help her get a deal. She trusted him with her songs, her voice memos, her notebooks. And then, one morning, she woke up to find that he had recorded 3 of her songs in his studio with his name listed as co-writer. When she confronted him, he told her she was overreacting. When she pushed harder, he stopped returning her calls. He ghosted her, took her music, and moved on like she never existed. She had not trusted anyone with her music since. Dina knew the story. She brought it up sometimes, gently, like pressing on a bruise to see if it still hurt. It always did. Tonight, Dina did not bring up Terry. Instead, she made Melody a lavender latte and said, "You should post more on social media. That set today was fire. You need to be recording these." Melody shook her head. "I just want to sing. I don't want to perform for an algorithm." "The algorithm is how you get heard. The sidewalk is how I get heard." Dina sighed. She loved Melody. She also wanted to shake her sometimes. Across town, in a penthouse on the top floor of a building that overlooked the Beverly Hills skyline, Chan-woo sat alone. The meeting had gone fine. He had walked in 25 minutes late, apologized once without explanation, and closed the deal anyway because he was Chan-woo, and that was what he did. Mr. Yo had given him a look that could have frozen lava, but said nothing in front of the investors. Now it was evening. The penthouse was silent. No music, no television, just glass walls, modern furniture, and the kind of emptiness that money could buy but never fill. Chan-woo sat in a leather chair and stared at the city lights. He was thinking about the woman on the sidewalk. He did not know her last name. He did not know anything about her except the sound of her voice and the way her fingers moved over the strings like they were having a conversation only she could hear. His mother used to sing. Her name was Yoonji. She died when Chan-woo was 11, cancer that moved too fast for the doctors to catch. After she was gone, his father filled the house with silence and expectation and the kind of discipline that left no room for grief. Chan-woo learned to be sharp, efficient, and closed. He learned that emotions were liabilities. He learned that music was something that belonged to the past, and the past was a room he was not allowed to enter. He had not been moved by anything in years. He built his life around control, logic, and distance. And today, a woman on a milk crate with an $11 guitar case had cracked something open inside him that he did not know how to close. He could still hear her voice, every note, every breath between the lyrics. He sat in the dark for a long time. "Now let me ask you something. Have you ever heard someone sing and felt it hit somewhere deeper than your ears? Like it reached something inside you that you did not even know was still alive? If you know that feeling, drop a comment right now." Now let's continue. 3 days passed. Melody never called the number on the card. She had looked at it once that first night, Googled the name Park Chan-woo, and fell down a rabbit hole of Forbes articles, business profiles, and real estate headlines that made her head spin. Billion-dollar hotel acquisitions, luxury developments in San Jose and Newport Beach, photos of him at corporate events in perfectly tailored suits, shaking hands with people whose net worth had more zeros than her bank account had digits. She laughed to herself, pinned the card to her fridge with a magnet shaped like a taco, and went to bed. She was back on Rodeo Drive on Tuesday. Same spot, same crate. The lunch crowd was thinner than Saturday, but the people who stopped genuinely listened. Melody was in the middle of an original song, one about growing up without a family, about learning to be your own home, when a shadow fell across her guitar case. She looked up. Chan-woo was standing there. No Maybach this time. He had walked. He was dressed slightly more casual than before, still expensive but less corporate. Dark pants, a fitted jacket over a simple black shirt, and he was holding 2 coffees. He held one out to her. Melody did not take it immediately. She looked at him with her head tilted slightly and said, "Are you following me?" Chan-woo's expression did not change. "You perform here on Tuesdays and Saturdays. I work across the street every day. I would say our schedules simply overlap." She almost laughed, almost. She took the coffee. And that was how it started. Over the next 2 weeks, Chan-woo showed up every single time Melody performed on Rodeo Drive. He never interrupted her set. He stood at the edge of whatever small crowd had gathered, listened without moving, and waited until she was done. Then they would talk. 5 minutes at first, then 10, then 20. He did not ask her surface-level questions. He did not say things like, "You're really talented," or "You should be famous." Instead, he asked what key she wrote in most. He asked why she favored certain chord progressions over others. He asked about specific lyrics, why she chose one word instead of another, why she rewrote a line, what she was feeling when she wrote it. He listened like her answers actually mattered. Melody was cautious. She had walls of her own, thick ones, built from years of being left by people who promised to stay. But she was also intrigued. She had never met anyone who listened to her this carefully. Most people heard her music. Chan-woo heard her. She started sharing more. She told him about the community center kids, how one of them, a 9-year-old girl named Bria, had the best natural pitch she had ever heard. She told him about the demo she was saving up for, how it cost around $2,000 for a decent studio session, and she was about halfway there. She told him about the time she sang at an open mic night in San Jose, and the whole room went dead silent, and she thought they hated it. But then everyone stood up and clapped, and she cried in the bathroom afterward because she had never been applauded like that. Chan-woo listened to all of it. He shared almost nothing about himself. When she asked personal questions, he deflected with dry, understated humor that was so subtle she sometimes was not sure if he was joking. She noticed this. She did not push. She knew what it looked like when someone had walls. She had her own. Then one afternoon, everything shifted. Melody had just finished her set. The crowd was dispersing. She was wiping down her guitar strings when a man walking by stopped dead, stared at Chan-woo, and said loudly, "Yo, isn't that the Korean billionaire? The one who bought that whole hotel chain?" Several heads turned. A woman pulled out her phone and pointed it in their direction. Chan-woo's posture changed instantly. It was subtle, but Melody caught it, a tightening of the shoulders, a flicker behind the eyes that lasted less than a second before the mask came back. He excused himself quietly and left. No goodbye, no explanation, just a polite nod and a quick, measured walk back toward the hotel. Melody stood there on the sidewalk, guitar in hand, realizing she had been having casual conversations with one of the wealthiest men in California for 2 weeks. He had listened to her talk about saving up $2,000 for a demo. He had handed her $3 coffees and stood on a public sidewalk like a regular person and never once mentioned any of it. That night, she told Dina everything. Dina nearly dropped the latte she was making. She pulled up articles on her phone and started reading them out loud from behind the counter. The Park Empire, the luxury developments, the estimated net worth, the rumors about old family ties, whispers that the Park family had once had connections to powerful networks in Seoul, connections that Chan-woo had publicly and aggressively distanced himself from since taking over the business. "Girl," Dina said, looking up from her phone, "that man does not stand on sidewalks for anybody. You have a billionaire showing up to your performances like he bought a season pass." Melody was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I liked who he was when I didn't know who he was. And now? Now I don't know. The last man who was interested in my talent used it against me." Dina put the phone down. She did not push. She just made Melody another lavender latte and changed the subject. That same night, in the Park Empire offices across from Rodeo Drive, Mr. Yo confronted Chan-woo. He had noticed the pattern. He had seen Chan-woo standing on the sidewalk multiple times. He had done his own quiet research and knew the woman was a street performer with no public profile, no representation, and no connection to their world. "Your father spent decades building this name," Mr. Yo said, standing in front of Chan-woo's desk. "A sidewalk romance is not what this family needs." Chan-woo looked at him with the kind of calm that made people more nervous than anger ever could. "My personal time," he said, "is not a board meeting agenda item." Mr. Yo held his gaze for a moment. Then he nodded once and left the office. The tension between them was clear, and it was only going to get worse. Melody did not show up to Rodeo Drive for a full week. She moved her performances to a different location, a beachside park near Manhattan Beach. Smaller crowds, ocean breeze, no chance of running into a billionaire on his lunch break. She needed distance. She needed to think. She was not the kind of woman who got swept up by money or status. She had grown up with nothing and learned early that the people who flashed the most were usually the ones who took the most. And the fact that Chan-woo had hidden who he was, even by omission, reminded her too much of Terry. People who hid things eventually revealed why, and the reason was never good. Chan-woo noticed her absence immediately. He went to Rodeo Drive on Tuesday. She was not there. He went again on Saturday. She was not there. He stood on the sidewalk where she usually sat and looked at the empty space next to the Gucci storefront and felt something he was not used to feeling: loss. He considered calling her. Then he realized he could not. She had never called his number. He never got hers. He did not even know her last name. He just knew her as Melody. He asked his assistant to look into it. Not surveillance, nothing invasive. He simply asked if anyone at the nearby coffee shops knew the street performer who played on Rodeo Drive. This led him to Marigold. This led him to Dina. Dina was behind the counter when Chan-woo walked in. She recognized him immediately from the photos she had Googled. She watched him approach the counter with the calm, measured steps of a man who was used to being in control of every room he entered. He ordered a black coffee. Then he asked, casually, if she knew the musician who sometimes performed down the street. Dina did not give him Melody's number. She did not give him Melody's last name. She did not give him anything. Instead, she set his coffee on the counter and said, if she wanted to talk to you, she would. Maybe ask yourself why she stopped showing up. Chan-woo looked at her. He was not used to being checked like that. He was used to people adjusting themselves around him, softening their words, making room. Dina did none of that. She just looked at him with the unbothered directness of a woman who had exactly zero interest in being impressed by his net worth. He picked up his coffee, he said, "Thank you," and he left. But her words stayed with him. Why did she stop showing up? He knew the answer. The moment on the sidewalk when someone recognized him, the shift in her eyes when the bubble popped and reality came flooding in. She was not intimidated by who he was. She was disappointed that he had not told her. A few days later, Melody was performing at Manhattan Beach. The crowd was small, maybe 8 or 9 people. The sun was going down and the light was golden and warm. She was singing something new, a song she had written that week, and it was clearly about trust, about the fear of letting someone in, about the difference between being seen and being watched. Mid-song, she spotted him. Chan-woo was standing far back near the boardwalk railing, hands in his pockets, not approaching, not joining the small crowd, just listening from a distance. When the song ended, Melody packed up slowly. Then she walked toward him. She was direct, she always was. "I looked you up," she said. "I know. You're a billionaire." "Yes." "And you stood on a sidewalk and let me talk about saving up $2,000 for a demo." Because that conversation was not about money. It was about your music. Melody stared at him. "Why do you keep showing up?" Chan-woo was quiet for a long moment. The ocean was behind them, waves folding over each other in the fading light. Then he said something that she was not expecting. "My mother used to sing. She died when I was 11. After that, my father filled the house with silence. I have not heard anything that sounded like her until I heard you on that sidewalk. I kept coming back because your voice reminded me that music used to make me feel safe." The words landed like a physical thing. Melody felt them in her chest. She did not know what to say. She sat down on a nearby bench. He sat down next to her. For a few minutes, neither of them talked. The ocean filled the silence. Then Melody said, "I am not a replacement for something you lost." Chan-woo said, "I know, that is not what I am asking for." "Then what are you asking for?" "I don't know yet, but I would like to figure it out, if you will let me." Melody looked at him, really looked at him, past the suit and the name and the headlines. She saw a man who was carrying something heavy and had been carrying it alone for a very long time. She said, "You can start by telling me one real thing about yourself, not from a headline, something real." Chan-woo paused. Then he told her that he had not played piano in 15 years. His mother taught him when he was young. After she died, he could not touch the keys without hearing her voice. So he stopped. Melody looked at him differently after that, not as a billionaire, as a person who lost something and never got it back. They sat on that bench until the sun was gone and the streetlights came on. They did not solve anything. They did not define anything. But something shifted between them, quiet and undeniable, like a door cracking open just enough to let the light in. That night, Melody got home and checked her phone. She had a flood of notifications on Instagram. Someone had tagged her in a video posted by a bystander weeks ago, a clip of her performing on Rodeo Drive, with Chan-woo standing at the edge of the crowd. The caption mentioned his name. The video had 180,000 views. The comments were a war zone. Some were beautiful. "Her voice is insane. Who is this woman? I could listen to her all day." But others were vicious. "Gold digger vibes. She's definitely getting paid for more than music. Must be nice to sing your way into a billionaire's wallet." Melody put her phone face down on her nightstand and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The viral video changed everything. Melody's Instagram went from 3,000 followers to 95,000 in 4 days. Her DMs were flooded. Some were from people who genuinely loved her voice and wanted to hear more. Some were from trolls who had already decided who she was based on a 30-second clip and a man standing nearby. Some were from media outlets asking for interviews about her relationship with Park Chan-woo. Melody was overwhelmed. She did not ask for any of this. She stopped posting. She stopped performing. She barely left her apartment. Dina came over every day with food and coffee and sat with her even when Melody did not feel like talking. "This is exactly what happened with Terry," Melody said one night, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her guitar untouched in the corner. "Somebody else controls the story and I am just a character in it." Dina wanted to fight back. She wanted Melody to post a response to set the record straight, but Melody refused. She knew how these things played out online. The woman always got torn apart. Especially a black woman with no platform going against a narrative that was already written. On Chan-woo's side, Mr. Yo presented him with a printed summary of the social media situation. Press mentions, blog posts, screenshots of comments. He framed it as a PR liability and suggested Chan-woo release a brief public statement distancing himself from Melody, something professional and clean. He could call her a talented local artist he happened to observe performing, and that would be the end of it. Chan-woo read the proposed statement. Then he looked at Mr. Yo and said, "I will not reduce her to a footnote for my convenience." He handed the paper back. Mr. Yo stared at him. The fracture between them deepened. 3 days later, something unexpected happened. Chan-woo's younger sister showed up. Juno Park was 27, loud, fashionable, emotionally transparent, and the only person on earth who could crack through Chan-woo's walls without trying. She ran a boutique fashion brand out of Newport Beach and had a social media following that she had built entirely on her own, separate from the family name. She was the opposite of her brother in almost every way. Where he was controlled, she was chaotic. Where he was silent, she was a megaphone. She had seen the viral video. She was not interested in the drama. She was interested in the voice. Juno walked into Marigold Coffee Shop on a Wednesday afternoon, ordered an oat milk matcha, and said to Dina behind the counter, "I am looking for the singer with the voice that made my robot brother feel feelings." Dina stared at her, then she laughed, then she called Melody. Melody met Juno at the coffee shop that evening. She was guarded at first, arms crossed, guard up. But Juno was impossible to resist. She talked with her hands. She said exactly what she meant. She had zero pretense. Juno told Melody, "My brother has not been the same since he heard you sing. I have been waiting 20 years for something to crack through that man's walls. Please do not disappear on him." Melody told Juno the truth. "I am not running from your brother. I am running from the noise around him. I have been invisible my whole life. Suddenly being visible in the worst way is terrifying." Juno nodded. She understood. Then she leaned forward and said, "Then let us make you visible on your terms." Juno proposed something. She was hosting a private listening event at her boutique in Newport Beach for her brand's spring launch. It was intimate, exclusive, invitation only. No press. She wanted Melody to perform 3 songs. No cameras unless Melody approved. No mention of Chanwoo. Just Melody and her guitar and a room full of people who would actually listen. Melody hesitated. She looked at Dina. Dina raised her eyebrows and gave the tiniest nod. Melody said yes. What none of them knew was that across the country in Scottsdale, Arizona, a man named Terrence Booker had also seen the viral video. He recognized Melody immediately. And more importantly, he recognized the song she was singing on Rodeo Drive. Because he knew she wrote it. Because he had a version of it on a hard drive with his own name listed as co-writer. Terry leaned back in his chair, watched the video again, and smiled. He smelled an opportunity. The Newport Beach boutique had been transformed. Juno's team had removed the clothing racks and display tables and replaced them with 60 white chairs arranged in a gentle semicircle. The lighting was warm, golden, soft. Exposed brick walls gave the space a raw, intimate feeling. Candles flickered on narrow shelves. It smelled like vanilla and new fabric. The guests were a mix of Juno's world, fashion people, creatives, influencer friends, a few local music figures. About 60 people total. No cameras, no reporters, no red carpet, just like Juno promised. Melody arrived an hour early. She was wearing a simple outfit that Dina had helped her pick out: dark jeans, a cream-colored blouse, and her silver hoop earrings. She carried her guitar case like she always did, with both hands close to her body. Dina was with her, talking nonstop to keep Melody's nerves from eating her alive. Juno met them at the back entrance and hugged Melody like they had known each other for years instead of days. "You are going to destroy this room," Juno said, "in the best way." Chanwoo arrived separately. He sat in the back row. He told Juno he did not want to distract from Melody's moment. Juno said, "Just be there, that is enough." The room filled. People settled into their chairs. Conversations hummed. Then Juno walked to the front and the room went quiet. Her introduction was brief and genuine. "I found this woman singing on a sidewalk, and I have not been able to get her voice out of my head since. Tonight, she is not a street performer. She is an artist. Listen." Melody walked out with her guitar. She sat on the stool that had been placed at the front of the room. She adjusted the microphone. She looked out at 60 faces looking back at her. She took a breath, and she played. She performed 4 songs. 3 were originals she had never performed for anyone beyond a sidewalk crowd. Songs about growing up alone. Songs about the quiet kind of strength that nobody applauds because nobody sees it. Songs about loving something so much it becomes the only thing that keeps you standing. The room was silent between songs, not polite silence, the kind of silence where people forget to breathe. For the 4th song, Melody paused. She adjusted her guitar and leaned into the microphone. "Someone asked me once what this song was called," she said. "I did not have a name for it then. I think I do now. I am calling it Still Here." She played it. The song was simple, just her voice and the guitar, but it carried the weight of everything she had ever been through. Every foster home, every empty room, every person who left. Every morning she woke up and chose to keep going anyway. When she finished, there was a pause, 3 full seconds of complete silence. Then the room erupted. People stood. A woman in the front row was openly crying. Juno was filming on her phone with tears running down her face. Someone in the back said, "Oh my God," and it sounded like a prayer. Chan-woo did not stand. He did not clap. He sat in the back row, completely still, and looked at Melody like she had just rearranged every molecule in his chest. After the event, several people approached Melody. Compliments, handshakes, business cards pressed into her palm. But one person stood out. A woman named Priya Dasgupta, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, wearing a blazer and sneakers. She ran an independent music label based in Palo Alto. Priya handed Melody her card and said, "I came here tonight for the fashion. I am leaving because of you. Call me this week. I am serious." Later that night, Melody stepped into the back garden of the boutique for air. The night was cool and quiet. She sat on a stone step with her guitar across her lap and looked at the sky. Chan-woo found her there. He sat down next to her on the step. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Melody said, "That is the first time I ever performed and did not feel like I was auditioning for someone's approval." Chan-woo said, "That is because you were not. You were just being heard." They looked at each other. Something passed between them, something electric and undeniable and terrifying to both of them. Melody said, "I named the song Still Here because that is what I have been trying to prove my whole life, that I am still here, that I did not disappear just because nobody was watching." Chan-woo said quietly, "I am watching." The next morning, Melody woke up to a text from Dina. It was a screenshot. Terry Booker had posted on his Instagram a clip of one of Melody's original songs with a caption that read, "Funny how songs I co-wrote years ago keep showing up in other people's sets. Just saying." He had tagged Melody. The post already had thousands of comments. Melody stared at the screen and felt the ground shift under her feet. Terry's post was calculated. He did not accuse Melody directly. He did not name her. He just tagged her and implied enough to let the internet fill in the blanks. And the internet was very good at filling in blanks. Within 48 hours, music blogs picked up the story. Street singer's viral moment under scrutiny. Who really wrote those songs? The narrative formed fast, faster than Melody could respond to it. Commenters who had praised her voice a week ago were now questioning her authenticity. Melody was spiraling. She sat in her apartment with her notebooks spread out on the bed, dozens of them. Composition books, spiral-bound journals, even a few napkins with lyrics scrawled in pen. Years of work, her handwriting, her words, her music. But none of it was copyrighted. She had never had the money or the knowledge to register her songs. Terry, as a producer, had studio recordings with his name listed as co-writer. He had files, timestamps, production credits. He had paperwork. She had notebooks and voice memos on old phones. Dina was furious. She wanted Melody to post a response to fight back publicly. Melody refused. "You know how this goes," she said. "I am a black woman with no platform going against a man with industry connections. The internet already has its story. Me yelling into the void is not going to change it." Juno told Chan-woo everything. She showed him the post, the articles, the comments. She explained who Terry was, the ex-boyfriend, the stolen songs, the betrayal. Chan-woo listened without interrupting. When Juno finished, he was quiet for 10 seconds. Then he said, "Get me everything on Terrence Booker." He did not send anyone to threaten Terry. He did not make a phone call to have him intimidated. What Chan-woo did was precise, legal, and devastating in its patience. He had his intellectual property legal team, one of the best firms in the country, based in San Jose, begin building a case. They reached out to Melody and asked her to provide any evidence of original authorship, dated notebooks, voice memos with metadata, text messages, anything. Melody was hesitant when Chan-woo told her about the lawyers. She sat across from him at a table in Marigold after hours, with Dina pretending to clean the espresso machine nearby. "I have had men step in to help me before," Melody said. "It always comes with a price." Chan-woo looked at her. "There is no price, and I am not stepping in. I am standing next to you. There is a difference." She held his gaze for a long time. Then she nodded. Terry escalated. He gave a short interview to a music blog where he painted himself as the wronged collaborator. He said Melody was talented but unstable. He said they wrote songs together during their relationship. He said she was now using his work to get attention because of her new rich boyfriend. The article went semi-viral. Melody read it in her apartment, alone, and cried. Not because of the lies, because Terry was doing exactly what he did before. He was erasing her, taking her voice and replacing it with his version of the story, making her small, making her disappear. She called Dina at midnight. "He is making me disappear again," she whispered. But something shifted the next morning. Melody pulled out every notebook she owned. She laid them across her kitchen table. She opened voice memos on her phone, recordings from years ago, dated and time-stamped. She found a text thread from 2019 where she had literally sent Terry lyrics she wrote, and he had responded with, "These are fire, babe. Let me lay them down in the studio." The evidence was there. She had always had it. She just never thought she would need it. She called Priya Dasgupta. Priya picked up on the first ring. Melody told her everything. About Terry, about the stolen songs, about the notebooks. Priya listened and then said, "I believe you, and I know people who will make sure the truth has a louder microphone than his lies. Let's get to work." That night, Melody sat in her apartment with her guitar. She tried to write. Nothing came. The strings felt wrong under her fingers. The words would not form. For the first time in her life, the music felt stuck. Terry did not just steal her songs. He stole her confidence. She put the guitar down and stared at the wall. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. A text from Chanwoo. "You do not have to write anything tonight. The music is not gone. It is just waiting for you to feel safe again." She read it 3 times. She did not respond, but she held the phone against her chest and closed her eyes. Chanwoo's legal team worked methodically. They cataloged every notebook, every voice memo, every text message. The metadata on Melody's phone recordings proved they were created months before Terry ever produced studio versions. The text messages showed him receiving completed lyrics from her, not co-writing them. The case was airtight. But Melody made a decision that surprised everyone. She did not want to fight this in court first. She wanted to fight it in the open, on her terms, with her voice. She recorded a video in her apartment. Just her guitar, and her phone propped up on a stack of books. No makeup, no filter, no script. She talked directly to the camera. She told her story from the beginning, growing up in foster care in Oakland, teaching herself guitar, writing songs in shelters and on buses and in parks, meeting Terry, trusting him with her music, watching him take her songs and put his name on them. She held up the notebooks. She showed the dated entries. She played the voice memos with timestamps visible. She read the text messages out loud, her voice steady even when her hands shook. Then she picked up her guitar and played one of the disputed songs. The raw, original version, the way she wrote it, with lyrics and a bridge that Terry's studio version did not even include because he had cut them to make it radio-friendly. She looked into the camera and said, "This is my song. I wrote every word, every note, and I am done being quiet about it." She posted it on Instagram and YouTube. The video exploded. Within 48 hours, it had over 2 million views. The comment sections were flooded with support. Other artists came forward sharing their own stories of being stolen from. Music journalists covered it. Entertainment blogs picked it up. Terry's narrative collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. Terry tried to do damage control. He posted a vague statement that said mistakes were made on both sides without actually admitting anything. The internet destroyed him for it. Priya moved fast. She officially offered Melody a recording deal with her independent label. It was not a major label deal. It was something better. Melody would own her masters. She would control her creative direction. She would have final say on everything. The advance was modest, but the terms were fair. Priya slid the contract across the table at a coffee shop in Palo Alto and said, "Your music is yours. That is not negotiable." Melody cried when she read it, not because of the money, because someone was finally putting it in writing that her voice belonged to her. A few days later, Melody visited Chanwoo's office in Beverly Hills for the first time. She saw his world up close, the glass towers, the assistants moving with quiet efficiency, the weight of an empire pressing down from every surface. She did not belong here. She knew it. He knew it. Neither of them cared. Chan-woo took her to a room on the top floor. It was empty except for one thing, a grand piano covered with a white cloth. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city, but the piano was the center of everything. It had been sitting there, untouched, for years, since his mother died. Melody walked to the piano. She pulled the cloth off slowly and folded it over a chair. She sat down on the bench and pressed a few keys. The sound was clear and bright, filling the empty room like water. She looked at Chan-woo. "Your turn," she said. "One real thing. You told me about this piano, now play it." Chan-woo stood by the door for a long moment. Then he walked over and sat down next to her on the bench. His hands hovered over the keys. They were shaking. It was the first time Melody had ever seen him physically unsteady. He pressed one key, then another. Then he played a simple melody, something slow and halting and imperfect. Something his mother taught him when he was 9 years old and the world was still a place where music meant safety. He played it all the way through. When he finished, his eyes were wet. He did not cry, but he was close. Melody put her hand over his on the keys. She said, "See, the music was waiting for you too." They sat there for a while. Two people who had spent their lives building walls, sitting on a piano bench in an empty room, letting the walls come down. That evening, the moment shattered. Mr. Yo requested a private meeting with Chan-woo. He came with documents. A formal recommendation from 2 senior board members of the park conglomerate. The message was clear. Distance yourself from this woman or face a vote of no confidence at the next quarterly board meeting. Mr. Yo set the papers on Chan-woo's desk and said, "This is not personal. This is business." Chan-woo read the documents. Then he looked up and said, "Schedule the board meeting." Mr. Yo blinked. "What?" "If they want to challenge me, let them. I built half the portfolio they are profiting from, and I will not let a boardroom dictate who I care about." Everything hit at once. The board meeting was set for a Friday afternoon at the park conglomerate offices in Beverly Hills. Chan-woo arrived early, which was unusual only because he arrived alone. No Mr. Yo at his side. No advisor whispering in his ear. Just him. The boardroom had 12 seats. 9 were filled. Mr. Yo sat at the far end, his face unreadable. The 2 senior members who had initiated the challenge, older men who had served under Chan-woo's father, sat with folders open in front of them like prosecutors preparing a case. They laid out their concerns methodically. Chan-woo's public association with Melody Sinclair was generating media coverage that had nothing to do with business. The viral videos, the drama with the music producer, the social media scrutiny, all of it created noise around a brand that had been built on discretion and power. Investors were asking questions. Partners were uncomfortable. Chan-woo let them finish, every word. He did not interrupt once. Then he stood. He spoke quietly. He did not raise his voice. He did not pound the table. He simply laid out facts. Every deal he had closed since taking over. Every market he had opened. Every dollar of growth he had generated. He told them that his father's legacy was built on fear, silence, and a reputation that kept people in line through intimidation. He told them that he had spent a decade dismantling that model and replacing it with something legitimate, something built on merit, not menace. Then he said, "If you want to vote me out, but you will not tell me who I am allowed to care about. That is not a business decision. That is a personal one, and my personal life is not your jurisdiction." The vote happened. Chan-woo survived, but barely. 7-2. Mr. Yo voted against him. When the room emptied, Chan-woo and Mr. Yo stood on opposite sides of the boardroom table. Neither spoke. The silence said everything. 20 years of loyalty cracked down the middle. Chan-woo began quietly restructuring his leadership team that same week. While Chan-woo was fighting his battle, Melody was preparing for hers. Priya had arranged Melody's first official showcase, a live performance at an intimate venue in Manhattan Beach. It would be the label launch event, Melody's debut as a signed artist. 150 seats. Tickets sold out in 11 minutes. But then Terry made his last move. He showed up in Beverly Hills. First, he went to Marigold. He walked up to the counter and tried to talk to Dina, asking where Melody was, saying he wanted to make things right. Dina looked at him with the kind of calm contempt that could curdle milk and said, "You need to leave this shop before I call the police, and I am not asking twice." Terry left, but he did not leave town. He found out about the Manhattan Beach showcase through social media. He posted publicly that he planned to attend, framing it as a peace offering, a chance to end the feud and show support. It was transparent. Everyone could see what he was doing. He wanted to insert himself into her moment. He wanted to make it about him. Melody saw the post and her jaw tightened. She called Chanwoo. "He does not get to show up to my moment," she said. "I will not let him take another stage from me." "He won't," Chanwoo said. "I promise." The night before the showcase, Melody had a crisis of confidence. It hit her at midnight, sitting on her bed, staring at her guitar. Everything was happening too fast. The label deal, the media attention, Chanwoo, the Terry situation. She felt like she was standing on a stage that was too big and the lights were too bright and everyone was looking at her and she was going to fall. She called Dina. "What if I am not good enough?" she said. "What if the sidewalk is where I belong?" Dina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Girl, the sidewalk did not make you good. You made the sidewalk worth stopping for. Tomorrow you do the same thing you have always done. You open your mouth and you sing. The rest will follow." The next night, the Manhattan Beach venue was packed. 150 people in a warm, intimate room with exposed wood beams and soft stage lighting. Priya was there in the third row, her leg bouncing with nervous energy. Juno was in the second row, phone out, ready to document everything. Dina was in the front row, dead center, already emotional before a single note had been played. Chanwoo was in the back, standing, not sitting. He wanted to be able to see the whole room. He wanted to see her face when she walked out. At the door, Terry showed up. He walked in with two people carrying cameras, like he was filming some kind of personal redemption documentary. Security stopped him at the entrance. Juno was standing nearby. She had arranged this personally. She walked over to Terry, looked him dead in the eye and said, "This is a private event. Your name is not on the list, and it never was." Terry tried to push past. Security stepped forward. Terry looked at the cameras, looked at Juno, and said loudly, "This is not over." Juno smiled. "Yeah," she said, "it is." Inside, the lights dimmed. The room went quiet. Melody walked onto the small stage with her guitar. She wore a simple black dress and her silver hoops. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were clear. She sat on the stool. She adjusted the microphone. She looked out at the room full of people who were there for one reason only, to hear her sing. She took a breath. And she performed the best set of her life. 6 songs, all originals, each one a piece of her story. Songs about being alone and choosing to stay alive. Songs about building yourself from scratch. Songs about trust and betrayal and the stubborn, relentless act of showing up anyway. The last song was new. She had written it the night before after hanging up with Dina. It was about finding your voice after someone tried to steal it. The melody was simple. The lyrics were devastating. The room was silent through every song. Not a phone rang, not a glass clinked. People were holding their breath. During the final verse of the last song, Melody looked up from her guitar and found Chanwoo in the back of the room. Their eyes locked. She held his gaze for an entire verse, singing directly to him without looking away, and he held hers. Nobody else in the room existed for those 30 seconds. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted over a minute. Priya was on her feet. Juno was crying. Dina was ugly crying. A man in the 4th row who had not cried since his father's funeral was wiping his eyes with a cocktail napkin. After the show, Melody stepped outside to get air. The beach was right there, dark and vast, the waves doing what waves always do. She breathed. Chanwoo came out a minute later. He stood beside her. The wind off the ocean moved through the silence between them. "Thank you," Melody said, "for not trying to save me, for just standing there." "You never needed saving," he said. Melody turned to face him. "I think I am falling for you, and that terrifies me more than anything Terry ever did." Chanwoo looked at her. He stepped closer. Good, because I have been falling since the second song on Rodeo Drive, and I have no idea how to stop. They kissed, soft, slow, real. The ocean behind them, the night quiet, the rest of the world somewhere else entirely. For the first time in the entire story, both of them exhaled. 6 months later, Melody's debut EP, titled Still Here, dropped on all streaming platforms through Priya's independent label. It trended on social media within the first 12 hours. Music blogs called it the most honest debut of the year. 3 of the 6 tracks were songs she had written years ago on buses, park benches, and in her tiny apartment. The opening track was the unnamed song from Rodeo Drive, now officially called Still Here. Listeners said it sounded like someone singing directly to them. Because it was. Priya booked Melody's biggest show yet, a live performance at a well-known music venue in Palo Alto. Tickets sold out in 11 minutes. Then they added a second show. That sold out in 9. Terry Booker's story ended not with a bang, but with a legal filing. Chanwoo's legal team, working with Melody's representation, filed a copyright infringement and fraud case backed by mountains of evidence. Terry settled out of court. As part of the settlement, he was required to publicly credit Melody as the sole writer of every song he had claimed. He was required to remove all versions from his platforms. He was required to issue a formal written apology that Melody's team approved before publication. His reputation in the music industry was finished. He relocated out of Scottsdale. Nobody took his calls. Melody did not celebrate his downfall. When Dina asked how she felt about it, Melody said, "I don't need his pain. I just needed my songs back." Mr. Yo resigned from his position as Chanwoo's senior advisor 2 months after the board meeting. But before he left, he requested one final private meeting. They sat across from each other in Chanwoo's office, the same office where they had spent a decade making decisions together. The same office where trust had been broken. Mr. Yo was quiet for a long time. Then he said something Chanwoo was not expecting. "Your mother," Mr. Yo began, "before she passed, she told me something once. She said her greatest fear was that you would grow up to be like your father, powerful but empty." Chanwoo did not move. Mr. Yo continued, "I spent 20 years trying to protect the family name. I think I forgot to protect the family." He paused. "The woman makes you better, Chanwoo. Your mother would have loved her voice." The room was silent. Chanwoo's throat was tight. He did not trust himself to speak for several seconds. Then he said, "Thank you for everything you did for this family." Mr. Yo nodded. He stood. They shook hands, and the old guard stepped aside. Chanwoo restructured the park conglomerate's U.S. operations with a new leadership team that reflected his values: transparency, legitimate enterprise, community investment. He launched a foundation, the Yoonji Park Foundation, named after his mother, dedicated to funding music education programs for underserved youth across California. Free instruments, free lessons, free studio time for kids who had the talent but not the access. Melody helped design the curriculum. She knew exactly what it felt like to have the talent and not the access. She had lived it. Chanwoo started playing piano again, not professionally, not publicly, just at home in the evenings and the quiet hours when the city went dark. Sometimes Melody sat beside him on the bench. She would sing, he would play, and they would create something together that neither of them could have made alone. It was never polished. It was never perfect. It was theirs. The night of the Palo Alto show arrived. The venue was beautiful. Warm lighting, packed house, an energy in the room that hummed like a tuning fork. Backstage, Melody stood in front of a small mirror in a dressing room the size of a closet. Her guitar was leaning against the wall. Her hands were shaking. Dina was there. She grabbed Melody's hands and held them until they were still. "You were born for this," Dina said. "Now go make them cry." Juno was there, adjusting Melody's jacket and fussing with her collar. "If you make me ruin my mascara again," Juno said, "I swear to God, Melody." Melody laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and good. She picked up her guitar. She walked down a narrow hallway. She heard the crowd on the other side of the curtain, hundreds of people talking and shifting in their seats and waiting for her. Waiting for her. She stepped onto the stage. The room went quiet, not gradually, all at once, like someone had pressed mute on the entire world. Melody looked out at the crowd. She saw faces she did not know, hundreds of people who were there because of her voice. She saw Dina in the front row, already pressing her hands to her mouth. She saw Juno beside her, phone up, recording, and she saw Chanwoo. He was not in the back this time. He was in the third row, close, visible, not hiding. He looked at her the same way he had looked at her on Rodeo Drive the very first time, like she was a sound he forgot existed, and he would stand on any sidewalk in any city for as long as it took just to hear it again. Melody adjusted her guitar. She leaned into the microphone. The room held its breath. "My name is Melody Sinclair," she said. "I grew up without a family, without a stage, without anyone telling me my voice mattered. I sang on sidewalks because nobody gave me a room, but I kept singing, because the music was the one thing nobody could take from me." She paused. The silence in the room was absolute. "This first song is called Still Here. I wrote it on a bus 3 years ago, and I am going to sing it for you now the same way I sang it the first time, like nobody is listening." She looked out at the crowd. "Except this time you are." She played, she sang, and the room disappeared. After the show, after the standing ovation that lasted so long, the venue staff did not know what to do. After the hugs and the tears and Juno posting a video that would get 4 million views by morning, Melody and Chanwoo walked along a quiet street in Palo Alto. The night air was cool. She was carrying her guitar case with both hands. He was walking beside her, hands in his pockets. They were not talking. They did not need to. Trees lined the sidewalk, their branches forming a canopy overhead. Streetlights cast pools of warm light on the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, someone was laughing. The world was going on around them, but it felt far away. After a long, comfortable silence, Melody said, "You never told me why you stayed that first day. On the sidewalk. You had a meeting. You were supposed to leave. Why didn't you?" Chanwoo was quiet for a moment. Their footsteps were the only sound. Then he said, "Because you sounded like the part of me I thought was dead, and I was not ready to walk away from it." Melody smiled, not the careful, guarded smile she had worn for most of her life. A full smile, the kind that reached her whole face. The kind she used to be afraid to let herself have because she had learned early that good things could be taken as easily as they were given. But this was not going to be taken. She knew that now. She shifted the guitar case to one hand and reached for his hand with the other. He took it. His fingers closed around hers, steady, warm, and certain. They walked together under the streetlights. Two people who had been alone for so long they forgot what it felt like to have someone stay. Two people who had built their lives around silence and walls and the stubborn belief that needing someone was a weakness. They were wrong about that. They knew it now. Melody Sinclair started with a milk crate, a guitar, and a voice that the world almost never heard. She did not need someone to save her. She never did. She just needed someone to stop walking and listen. Park Chan-woo was that someone, not because he was powerful, not because he was wealthy, but because he recognized something in her that the rest of the world was too busy to notice, that she was extraordinary. And she recognized something in him too, that underneath the empire and the silence and the walls, there was a man who just wanted to feel something again. They did not complete each other. They were already whole. They just reminded each other what it felt like to be alive. And the music was always there, waiting. "Still here,"